Let me know if you can see me. And we'll get started here. Okay. Check 1, 2. You should have audio now, but let's just make sure before I get started. Check 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. Check. Okay. Perfect. All right. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't know what's up. I use this software, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. So we're just trying to do the best we can to make everything work here. So I think that's good. All right. Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. Perfect. Awesome. Well, everybody, today, you can see and hear you. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about what I consider the key element to make blues sound like blues. Okay, and then I've got some buddies here from Guitar Zoom that are going to be helping with the chat and things like that, because I'm going to try to focus on doing this as best I can. So, okay, perfect. Thank you very much, everybody. So, one of the things that when I first started learning how to play blues, and I don't remember if I had a teacher or if I'm not going to throw a teacher under the bus because I really don't remember what it was I was doing. But I was taught that when you play 12-bar blues and you're going to solo, you're getting the same echo. Hold on a second. Huh. Let's see here. Okay, Joe, are you still getting the echo? Let me try and turn all three of these things on. Hey, Jimmy. Hey, Winged Wolf. Hey, George. We'll just try and dial this in if you can. Doug is here. Awesome. You had it for a second. Okay, hold on. Does it sounds good? Okay. All right, good. All right. Okay, thank you. I'm just turning all the buttons on to see what works. Okay, thank you. Can you hear the guitar okay? Okay. All right, good. Okay, cool. Well, thank you. Thank you for your help. This is awesome. All right, let me just get one thing back up on the screen and we will get started. All right, cool. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let's go ahead and keep going here. So when I was a kid, I was learning how to play blues. I learned the 12-bar blues like you and I have talked about. And then I was learning that when I solo over, now this isn't what the lesson's about. I just want you to understand where I'm coming from. So when I learned that when you're on the 1 chord, you should solo minor pentatonic. And when you go to the 4 chord, you should solo major pentatonic, A major pentatonic, if we were in A, for instance. Okay? And so I just grew up, again, I was quite young at this time, but I thought that's what you did was if you were in, if it was on the 1 chord, you played minor, and when it goes to the 4, you play major. Well, come to find out later that is a possibility. But you can, in reality, play major and minor anytime you like. You can switch back and forth between those anytime you feel like it, okay? But it does work. I mean, if you think about it, if you were playing your 1 chord and you go... and then it goes to the 4... it would work just fine. But the truth is you don't really have to do that. But before I get to the big thing I want to explain to you, I want to explain a couple of different things that you can do if you've never thought about it before. Now, when I teach people how to solo in the beginning stages of learning how to solo, the first thing that we do is we just use minor pentatonic for the whole thing, for all 12 measures. The 1 chord, the 4 chord, 5 chord, we're just soloing minor pentatonic over the whole thing to get used to stuff. So if you're brand new to trying to learn how to solo over blues, a great way to do it is just solo minor pentatonic over everything, okay? And you try and just land on A's or the root, whatever key you're in, okay? In this case, I've got 1, 4, 5 would be A and D and E, right? Those would be my 1, 4, 5 chords. But maybe in the very beginning, I'm just trying to target an A or a root. You see? So I'm back. Was that earlier quick lesson? Well, I had audio problems, so we're back though. So you just land on A's as much as you can. You just try and get used to targeting your movement to A's. That's step one. Step two is you get used to that, okay? And maybe what you do is you start landing on A's over A and D over D and E over E, right? So now you start trying to target the chords a little bit more. So A comes up and you go to A. D comes up, you start trying to target a D. E chord comes up, you start trying to target the E, okay? So that's step two, all right? Now, I'm not going to run through 14 steps for you, but just so you kind of understand how this works. So the third thing what you do then is you start exploring some different scale options. And one of those is major pentatonic. So you can take your minor pentatonic, I'm starting with my first finger here on A, and I could move the entire minor pentatonic scale back 1, 2, 3 frets. That puts my pinky on A. My first finger's on F sharp, but my pinky's on A. If I play that exact same shape down here 3 frets lower, 1, 2, 3, but I start trying to target the A's in there. So now I've got a brand new scale that I could use to solo with, which is the A major pentatonic. So I could practice soloing over the 1, the 4, and the 5 just using major pentatonic. You see? And I might try and emphasize the A and just get used to emphasizing A, okay? Now here's where the cool stuff begins, is you start learning how to kind of maneuver between major and minor pentatonic. So you might do a lick in A minor pentatonic and then head over to major pentatonic and then maybe you head back to minor pentatonic, because they do sound quite a bit different from each other, okay? So that would be like a step 3, step 4, somewhere in there, right? Now here's a couple other things I want to give you before we get to the really good stuff. I've always called it parallel soloing, but you can call it whatever you want. But over the A, maybe you solo A minor pentatonic. Over the D, you solo in D minor pentatonic. Over E, you solo in E minor pentatonic. And that's how you get these kind of parallel things where you hear people going, right? All that kind of stuff where they kind of follow each other around. It's chord chasing is what I call it. So over the A, you might be soloing an A minor pentatonic. Over the D, you could, now let's think about all the options we've talked about so far. And yes, I should mention this too. We're doing all of this to celebrate creative blues soloing, a new guitar course that I have that you can check out. There's going to be a link in the chat that, that you're going to be able to look at. Okay? So when I'm soloing, I have the option of soloing A minor pentatonic over everybody. I have the option of soloing A major pentatonic over everybody. I have the option of flipping between A minor and A major pentatonic over everybody. Okay? Then I have this parallel option. Over A, I might solo A minor or A major. But over D, I solo D minor or D major pentatonic. And over E, I solo E minor or E major. Okay? Just either one of those would work just fine. So that's what I want you to be thinking about. Let's see here. Just going through, making sure I got everybody here. Okay, hold on. Who's no mods on? Who is it that we need to ban? I'm just checking here. If you can let me know quick. Because it'd make my life easier if you just told me. I'm trying to see the chat at the same time here. So that way we can just keep going here. Okay, so let me know if there's any issues. Just give me a name. If there was a spammer, please let me know and I can try and take care of it, okay? So again, let's just recap that and then let's move on because I want to get to the good stuff here, okay? So we've got A major over everything, or A minor over all 3 chords, 12-bar blues, right? Or we use A major and A minor back and forth. Then we start learning how to do what I call parallel keys or chord chasing. So over the A, you play an A minor or A major. Over the D, you play an D minor or D major. And then over the E, you play an E minor or E major. Okay? So it's pretty cool how you can do that. Okay? So if I'm playing A, I might go to A minor. Over the D. Over the E, maybe I'll go E major pentatonic. And then over D, go back to D minor. And then over the A, do something like that. So now let's get to the really good stuff, if that makes sense. And again, we could talk about that stuff for hours on end alone, but let's get to the really good stuff. So what I learned somewhere along the line, and again, I don't remember where, was that the trick to blues isn't really playing major and then playing minor, although those are all really great things that you can do. It's learning how to combine them together at once. That's what it is. Learning how to put everything together at once. Okay? So if that makes sense, what we're going to do here is I'm going to take this A minor pentatonic and take A major pentatonic, and I'm going to start combining them together. Okay? And when you combine them, they become all sorts of different things. And we can define them as all sorts of different things, but really just try and stick with me and think about it being a combination of both major and minor together. So let's take and do this. If you've got your guitar with me, let's go to the center of the guitar. We're going to go to the 4th and 3rd strings, which is 5 and 7 and 5 and 7. Okay, 5 and 7 and 5 and 7. Now, if we wanted to add some major into that minor pentatonic, one thing that we could do is instead of playing this 5, we could play the 4. Just think about it. Okay, so right there what I'm doing is I'm adding the note F sharp instead of the note G. And all of a sudden you can tell it sounds a little bit different than a standard pentatonic would, minor pentatonic. Okay, well, let's make another change. This is the most significant change, is that if you think about it, oftentimes we're playing a 12-bar blues that's in major, but we solo in minor pentatonic, and that's okay. That's part of the beauty of blues, okay? But what we're going to do is we're going to take this middle finger right here. If we think about the A major bar chord that I'm playing, right here, this note right here is C sharp. Well, we're playing it in the chord, but we're not playing it in the scale. When we do minor pentatonic, we're not playing that note. So what we're going to do is we're going to add that note in. And the way I'm going to add that in is I'm going to do what I call a forward motion from this note right here, which is C, which is the minor pentatonic, to the major right here. So if I put the 4 and 7 from the 4th string together and then play it like that, all of a sudden it starts sounding like blues. So let me just go a little bit further here, and I'm sorry if this is falling off for some of you if you've never studied your scales before. But if you understand that your pentatonic scale has multiple positions, or boxes we call them, right, that you connect across the fretboard. So what I'm doing here is I'm simply taking the major pentatonic and I'm playing the 2nd position. Now you can write this down really quick if you want to on a piece of paper, but if I played the 2nd position of A major pentatonic, I'd be playing 5 and 7, 4 and 7, 4 and 7, 4 and 6, 5, 7, 5, 7. That would be the 2nd position of A major pentatonic. That's all I'm doing is playing A major pentatonic in what I'm calling the 2nd position. And what I want to do is visualize that over the 1st position of A minor pentatonic that many of us know, right? So A minor pentatonic is 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, 5, 8. And I'm trying to visualize those two positions over the top of each other, like one of them is colored red and one of them is colored green or something, right? So I can see how they're different from each other. And I can also see how they're the same from each other, right? So what the relationship is between these two. So when I start playing blues, what I want to do is I want to pick out certain notes from what could be considered the minor pentatonic and then certain notes from the major pentatonic and put them together and get this unique new sound. And that's what I want to show you right now. So if any of that doesn't make sense, again, the guitar course will help you with that. Creative blues soloing is going to help you with that. But I mean, you can learn it anywhere you want, but that's something that you really want to start thinking about, is trying to visualize those two scales at the same time. Now, that doesn't mean you want to play all the notes sequentially, because if you put those two together, you're going to wind up with lots of notes. And the problem is if you just start playing like this, it doesn't sound like blues. It sounds more like you're playing what we call a diatonic scale. So the trick is trying to play certain notes from each one of those strings, and that's what I want to show you right now. Okay, so let's say this. Again, if you've got your guitar, and if you don't, hopefully you can watch this later when you've got some time, because you'll be able to watch the replay. So let's say I started on that fourth string again, and I play 4 and 7. Now those two notes could be looked at as either one from major and one from minor, or we could look at them both as just being from major. Again, that's really not the point, but if you visualize those two, you're going to see what I'm talking about. Okay, then the next string, what we're going to do is play 5 and 6, which I've always called the minor to major twist. We're going from minor pentatonic to major pentatonic, which really doesn't make any sense in logical theory, but in the theory of blues or rock and roll, it just sounds friggin' cool. So the next string, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play 5 and 7. 5 and 7. Okay? Now those two we could look at as coming from the major pentatonic. So we had kind of major here, major minor twist here, major, and then minor, we're going to play 5 and 8 up top. So if I put that whole thing together, I get... And it begins to sound more like blues is supposed to sound. It's really cool. Now, what I like to do is I'll do a little bit of an idea like that when I'm soloing, and I can always shift back into doing straight minor pentatonic or straight major pentatonic or something like that. So let's say I did that run. I'm doing 4, 7, 5, 6, 5, 7, 5, 8. Okay? And then I'm going to go back to the 7 here, back to the 5. But then I go to the 8th fret of the 2nd string, which is just minor pentatonic, but I didn't play it in that run. When I go to that note, it's going to sound really vibrant because it's new. Now, it's just, again, it's just coming from A minor pentatonic. But in that run, I didn't use it. I played 5 and 7. So listen. And it gives me that authentic kind of bluesy sound. So I'm connecting up the two positions through the 5, that 5 and 7 spot. That's exactly what I'm doing. That's exactly what I'm doing. Do you ever use the blue note? I use it all the time. We're just not there yet. Although we did talk about it in one of our last live sessions, but I haven't added it yet, okay? So I'm just showing you how major and minor can kind of twist together to create something fresh and something new, okay? So as I play this, and I go to that 8th fret, all of a sudden, it just brings that minor pentatonic back out. Now, from there, I might do a pentatonic lick, minor pentatonic, using the blue note that somebody had just mentioned. So maybe I go... Fen says, is that the same as playing modes? For me, it isn't, because when I play modes, I'm focusing on other notes. Like if I'm playing Dorian, I'm trying to focus, for instance, on the major 6 or something like that. When I'm thinking about blues, I'm thinking about, again, pentatonic is what needs to stand out the most. That doesn't mean that sometimes I don't use modes when I solo blues or something like that, because that's another topic of conversation. But, and if you know your modes, think about this. And again, I'm not going to try and get too deep here, but if you know your modes, when I play this 5-7, which is coming from the major pentatonic, we could look at this as the major 6th of Dorian, which is just a great note to add in if you know Dorian. If you don't worry about it. Okay? But see, if I come back down with minor pentatonic, maybe add that blues note in with the slide that we talked about a couple of sessions ago. See, it has that bluesy sound, but now I'm accentuating more of that minor blues sound. You see? So there's a lot of really cool things that you can do by learning how to combine these notes together. Okay? I'm going to show you another one. And again, I'm not trying to, if you're new to this, I'm not trying to blow you out of the water with this stuff. You can go back and watch it, and you can try and take as much of this as you can and you use it. And certainly do me a favor and check out the link for Creative Blues Soloing, see if it's something that could help you. So let's do this. Watch this. This is really neat. So let's say I went back. Again, I'm going to the second string, which was 5 and 7 for us, and then 5 and 8. So I was using a little bit of major, a little bit of minor tonality, right? Thinking in terms of major and minor pentatonic, right? Not trying to get swayed by modes, because if we go to modes, immediately our brain goes, well, what about Dorian? And then we start doing, and it doesn't sound like blues anymore. It sounds like Dorian. We can make Dorian sound like blues. What you always have to remember about all of this stuff we're talking about is it's in your phrasing. It's in your understanding. It's not just in your playing. Because you can play something and it won't sound bluesy, or you can play something and it will sound very bluesy. You've got to understand that it comes down to the way that you phrase and the intention of the notes that you're actually using. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. So as I'm playing, I've got 5, 7, 5, 8. And as I'm doing that, again, what I'm trying to portray is this cross between major and minor pentatonic, which always reminds me of like Stevie Ray Vaughan or just that sound, right? So if I took that and I made a little lick out of it, let's say I started doing this. I'm going to go 7, 5, 8. So just a little lick, right? I could use that over this. It's got that major and minor kind of sound to it. And then watch this. What I'm going to do, what I do is I take these two notes, the 7 and the 8 that I'm playing, and I move them up 1 fret. So now this is on 8 and this is on 9. Okay? So chromatically, it's just a shift of those two notes. But let's look at what actually happened. This note, which I'm thinking of in my head, is coming from major pentatonic, the 7th fret. When I move it to 8, it becomes minor. This 8 was coming from the minor pentatonic, but when I move it up 1 fret, it becomes the major 3rd that we added 1 octave higher. So they shift places. So still one is minor and one's major. So you can get some really cool licks. And then maybe you come down with more of a minor thing, or maybe you come down with more of a major thing, right? The point is that if you think about this field that we've created now, these opportunities of scales, and again, I'm going to review this again just so you understand. You could play A minor pentatonic over the entire 12-bar blues, all 3 chord changes. Okay? You could play major pentatonic over all 3 of those chord changes, over the entire 12-bar blues. You could chord chase A, you're going to play A minor or A major. D, you're going to play D minor or D major. E, you're going to play E minor or E major. And again, don't start getting too scientific where you go, well, I got to do everything, otherwise one of those scales is going to feel bad. The goal is to make it sound musical. If you have a hard time making your major sound musical in a particular situation, I've always found it's easier to play minor pentatonic when you're doing parallel, because you've got more time on the one. You spend way more time on the 1 chord. That's a great place to utilize some major. Where when you move to the 4 and the 5, that's a great place to try and utilize more minor, but everybody's different. Okay? But then we get to this really cool space where all of a sudden we start trying to see both major and minor pentatonic functioning at the same time. And the reason why we want to see them separately, and this kind of goes into those of you that ask about modes, is because I want to be able to separate them. I don't want to see it as one cohesive piece that just winds up sounding, whenever I play Dorian, it winds up becoming more of a 3-note per string kind of sound. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, and I might be able to utilize that in this playing. But if I see these as major and minor, I can simply separate them and do whatever I want with them, and then I can connect them back together. Okay? So if that makes sense, that's what I'm looking for here. So at any time, I could move into just playing minor pentatonic and then move into major. And then combine those. Minor, major going into minor. You see, there's all kinds of really great stuff that you can do. Gary mentions B.B. King. This is the quintessential elements that made those blues players really great, was the ability of being able to move back and forth between these and manipulate the sounds that you get. And you can turn this into whatever you want. It can become more rock oriented, faster playing, whatever it is you want. But that's what it is. And then you include that with the idea that you can add in notes that don't fit in major or minor pentatonic. Maybe you start doing chromatic stuff. You play a lick. And right there I played 8, 7, 6, 5 on the second string, right? And again, it gives me another new kind of sound. I was used to think, like, one of my favorite Stevie Ray Vaughan licks, very simple, but if I go, or, there's a million ways I can do it, but the point is, he's doing a lick I showed you a couple of sessions ago. Then he goes here to the 7th fret, and then he does 5, 6, 5. So he's playing 7, 6, 5, right? He's not just playing it chromatically because he's thinking about it, but it just sounds cool. Whatever it is you like, okay? Yeah, Gary Moore, like somebody mentioned Gary Moore. I'm a huge Gary Moore fan. There's so many players that you can look at, but this is the trick, is learning how to move back and forth between these. Now, that doesn't mean that you just want to play major and minor combined together. Sometimes you just want to play minor. Sometimes you just want to play major. That parallel idea, that chord chasing idea I was talking about before, is still great when you're on a 5 and you're going, and then 4 comes up, and then 1 comes out. Then you might do something where you're combining them, but see how different that sounds? So again, I just have to be careful that I don't overdo my thought process by thinking I have to do all this all the time. The beauty of 12-bar blues, especially if you got a jam track, is it goes on for like 5 minutes. So you can test out all these different things at different times and see what works for you, see what you need help with. But what I would recommend, and I did this again in another session, was get yourself a piece of paper and just write down, for instance, play A minor over everything, or minor pentatonic. Maybe you're not in A, maybe you're in G or something. Play major pentatonic over everything. Mix major and minor. And by major and minor, I mean going back and forth between them. Okay? Then you might have parallel soloing. And that means solo A whatever you want over A, D whatever you want over D, E whatever you want over E. Okay? And then blend A minor and major. That's where we put the two together. Why doesn't any of this work with jazz, Danny? Because jazz is generally built off the major 7th and not the dominant 7th. When we play the dominant 7th, that's where we get the bluesy kind of, for those of you that know your modes, this is where Mixolydian and Dorian and that sort of thing. Because we get the flatted 7, the minor 7, and the major 6th. Those are the notes that really accentuate the blues. But then then we have to add the major 3rd. So we're playing the minor and the major 3rd. Right? That's a real blues staple, is going from that minor to major 3rd, which I call the minor to major twist. Okay? So hopefully that helps you a little bit in understanding some other things that we can do with blues. Please do me a favor. You can check out the guitar course, Creative Blues Soloing. I'm sure there'll be a link coming up pretty quick here. You can study all of these kinds of things and learning how to get more creative with your playing and not just be stuck in a scale position or learning, lick number 1 and lick number 7 or something like that, but really learning how to put all these together. Okay, let's see, Christopher, I still can't play some licks really fast, just like you did in the bluesy guitar jam. Well, listen, it takes time to develop all these things. Sean says, can you play the major pentatonic over the chords in the blues progression? Can you play the major? Sure. So I'm not sure if you're asking me to do it right now, but if I played A major right there and I went. Now I should add the blues note in because it'll sound cooler. Now here's the deal. Since you asked, Sean, if I go to D and I play A major pentatonic, now the major pentatonic doesn't include the note D. Because there's my D right there, and I'm not playing it. Major pentatonic doesn't have that. So that might be a perfect opportunity, Sean, for me to add that in. So I'm just playing major pentatonic, but adding in the note D instead of the note C sharp that would normally occur. And then the E. But can you see how the major pentatonic falls flat? I shouldn't use the word flat because it'll be confusing. It falls short, okay? The minor pentatonic has way more spice to it, which is why oftentimes we teach or learn minor pentatonic first, because minor pentatonic has more of that flavor with all the bending and things that we can do. And then we add the flavor of major pentatonic into the minor by going to it once in a while or something, or by combining them. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. Thank you too, Sean. Let's see here. Never play faster than you can play it clean. Yeah, Steven says never play faster than you can play it clean, which is great. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is we all know to really get good at this is a lifetime investment, and you're trying to get good at what you do. You're trying to understand what you do, but then you're also trying to learn to get creative with what the information is. And I know you've heard me say this before, but if you've watched any of my videos, but I always think of it as 3 different categories. You've got your fundamental or rudimentary category, and this is where you practice finger exercises and scale shapes and, get your metronome out practicing various technique things and things like that. And then you've got your understanding category, which we can call theory, but it isn't just theory. It is theory, but it's also logical theory, real world theory, application theory, right? It's not just what it says in a book, but how to make it make sense with if you're playing over rock versus punk versus country versus jazz versus blues, whatever it might be. And then you've got this third category, which oftentimes people don't spend enough time in, which is how to make music sound like music. Not worrying as much about whether it's fast or slow or pentatonic or diatonic or this shape or that shape or second string. It's really not that. It's trying to take elements of both of these other categories and put them together into something that makes it sound like music. So if that makes sense, that's exactly what you're trying to do. So if you spend all your time just practicing, bucket A or bucket B or whatever it would be, you never get over here to this creative side, which is what you need to be able to jam with other people or write music with other people or whatever it might be. If you just show up going, well, I know a lot about theory, people will go, well, that's great, but can you play, right? It always comes down to whether you can play. And that's what I want you to be thinking about. So none of these are more or less important to me. They're just all very important. And that's why I want you to think about that. How Ark says, how often does Steve have these live feeds? Well, we're doing some special ones right now that are at noon central, whatever your time zone is. And we've got one more coming up. I'm not sure if we're doing any more, but I know we've got one more on Wednesday. That's going to be a Q&A where I'm going to answer questions. Now, I'm going to let you know, though, that the Q&A has to be pertaining to blues. I don't want to get off in the weeds talking about diminished triads or something like that for a thrash metal tune. I love metal as much as anybody. Believe me, I do. But that's not what our Q&A. Our Q&A should be more centered around what we're talking about, which is blues elements and trying to make things sound more like blues. Okay? So let's see here. Andra says, you mentioned it's easier to bend in the minor pentatonic just because where it's sitting in the position itself there. address. So if you think about it, when I'm playing minor pentatonic, if I play A minor pentatonic, the 7th fret right there is a common place to bend a whole step. And again, this was in an earlier session. And the 8th fret is, and the 8th fret, these are 3 really common places that you hear every guitar player on the planet do bends. They're not the only places that you can do bends, and you can certainly bend from the major pentatonic as well, but it's just very common to hear those kind of bends coming from your minor pentatonic, where your major oftentimes will give you what we call half-step bends because you're bending to a note that exists in the minor. Now, can you bend it a step and a half to get? Absolutely, and they sound great. Like right there, I did, instead of doing a whole step bend from 8, I did a step and a half bend from 7. Or I could do a whole step bend. There's all kinds of different things like that you can do. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. We're going to stop there, and the guys will try and answer your questions as best they can before we all head out of here. Let's see here. Sean says, Steve, is it best to watch Wednesday session via YouTube? You can comment through Facebook. The only thing with Facebook is, like I said before, if you just put your first name in your comment, because Facebook doesn't allow me to see your name, it's, I don't know why. It's not a me thing. I'm using a program called Restream, and it connects to Facebook. But when you're in a private group, it doesn't allow your name to show up for, privacy reasons, things like that, which I actually kind of admire them for. I think that's okay. But if you're commenting from Facebook, just put your first name in there. You don't have to put your whole name, but just put your name in there. Let's see here. Okay, looks like we got it. Okay, cool. Thank you. So for those of you that are wondering if we're live, Sean can tell you we're live because I'm talking to him. Thanks. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. This is great. So awesome. See you, Sam. See you, Maxwell. I keep looking around the corner because I'm trying to see the chat behind my camera. But anyway, everybody take care, stay positive, keep practicing. Watch this video a couple of times. And if you can always share it with somebody that might benefit from that. I would sure appreciate that. And do me a favor, finally, check out the guitar course. See if it's something that you might be interested in. And if it's not, that's cool. But maybe it'll help you and make things a little bit easier for you. So, all right. So everybody take care, stay positive, and I'll talk to you all on Wednesday, noon Central. We're going to be doing a Q&A relative to blues discussion. So please try and make it about blues, okay?